Hello there, everybody. It is 4:17, and you are at the City of Wausau Parks and Recreation Committee for the City of Wausau, and this is Tuesday, September 2nd. And the first item on the agenda today is public comment. Do we have any public comment here today? Public comment going once? Twice? No public comment. Okay, so on to item number 2, approval of the minutes of the August 4th, 2024 meeting.
A motion to approve as recorded.
I would second.
Motion has been made by Alder Neal and seconded by Alder Watson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that passes unanimously. Discussion on usage of bikes. I'll turn that over to Jamie.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we talked about this at the Parks Commission meeting this morning too, because we have both a city and a county ordinance that pertain not specifically to e-bikes, but our ordinances cover the use of anything on the trail that's but motorized. I guess I'm trying to get my cursor to go to, there we go. So in your packet, I included for discussion, I wanted to provide you with this information and then ask the committee to let me know for the direction if we would need to do anything more specific with our county ordinance to make it more specific to e-bikes, or if it's good as it is, we can talk about Alder Neal or Alder Larson can talk too about some of the items that came out of the Park Commission discussion this morning as it relates to e-bikes. But in our current ordinance, we don't specifically have anything that says outright e-bikes, but we do talk about vehicle regulations, and any vehicle is not allowed on city trails that's considered a motorized vehicle. And anything that is on there is excess speed of not to exceed a speed of 15 miles per hour. So what we do is we reference the state statute. You can see right there at state statute 340-01 that has the definition of what a motor vehicle is. It also has the definition of e-bikes. And the state recognizes all three classes of e-bikes as e-bikes as long as they have pedals that propel it forward. There is an e-bike that has a throttle, but it also has pedals. So as long as it has that pedal propulsion, it is considered a bicycle. And so therefore, right now, we do allow that on all of our trails. We do not differentiate between an electric bike or another bike. They're all just considered bicycles as long as they meet those definitions. Now, if they have a motor above the 750 cc's, that's in the state statute, or maybe it's not cc's, but horsepower, and the state statute's in here as well, then it would not meet that definition. It would be considered a motor vehicle and would not be allowed on our trails. So far, this has come up with multiple conversations about what is there regulated. The police department did a nice video after they got this information from me to educate the public. We don't restrict them in any way at the moment. The only concerns I've heard is speed. We don't currently have speed limit signs on the trails. That was something that did get brought up this morning in the Park Commission meeting. I did get a number of other input from other communities on what they do. Some do regulate e-bikes, some don't like we do, and they're just providing more of an educational pamphlet on what they are, what the rules of them are. But I did include, that was our vehicle regulations in our park chapter, and then we also have a bicycle section in chapter 10 that talks about bicycles and being allowed where they're allowed. And then in addition, we do have another code that's fairly new to our city code within the last couple of years, was the electric scooters. So it does say where they are allowed and where they're not allowed, and their maximum speed limit of 20 miles per hour as well. So I feel like our city code covers our intent, but we don't have anything specifically that says e-bike. So that's the discussion. Do you think we need to, or do you think that we just need to do some education? I just want to have that conversation. So similar to what we had this morning. So for Alder Larson and Alder Neal, it's a duplicate conversation, but We do have two separate ordinances that right now are pretty mirrored. And so if we wanted to change anything specifically city-related.
Go ahead, Alder Neal.
Thank you, Mr.
Go
Chair.
ahead, Alder Neal.
Well, mentioned briefly this morning that it's often impossible to change people's behavior voluntarily. You generally have to do something that, changes it for them. As far as park trailways, like the River Parkway or others, I thought that we definitely need to post the 15 mile per hour speed limits for sure, particularly paying attention to the most heavily traveled ones, the most popular. Also brought up the idea of speed bumps or actual speed humps, as they're called. I did some further research today after the meeting, and yeah, there are permanent as well as temporary bumps or humps that you can use. The good thing about the humps is they're friendly to snow plowing activity, but maybe they're not as effective at slowing people down because you can kind of glide over them. But they are visual representations of a sort of like, hey, slow down. Generally they're going to be striped or somehow marked to be seen, from a distance. So I think we should definitely look into those kinds of activities just to kind of stay ahead of this thing. So, thank you.
Thank you, Alder Neal. I don't really have anything to add to that other than what Alder Neal said. I mean, it's easy to post a speed limit too, but try to enforce it is another thing we discussed this morning too. It's just usually unattainable. So perhaps we could look into speed humps or something, or signage, and where needed in the future. Alder Neal.
Yeah, just to follow up, I mean, for the sake of, optimum safety, like on, our trail system, the paved trails, the idea of the temporary bumps, I think would be more effective at making people slow down because it's a little less pleasant to go over one of those than a speed hump. So, and they get taken away, in the off seasons. So, I think that's something we can look into, and I think we really do need to pursue it. I mentioned that just been noticing elsewhere this summer on a few trips that the trend is dramatically rising on the use of e-bikes. I even brought up the little anecdote that my wife and I went to Mackinac Island a couple weeks ago, and at the ticket booth on the mainland, there's signs prominently saying, e-bikes are not allowed on Mackinac Island, so don't even think about it, buddy. And then we got on the island, and they were everywhere. And something we learned, too, was that evidently it's really hard to enforce something like that because you can't go up to somebody and say, why are you riding this bike? Because if somebody has a need to assist them with mobility, they have every right to have that bike. And nobody has the right to ask them about it because that's a HIPAA type thing where you can't say, hey, prove that you need this. All they have to do is say, hey, I need this. And that's it. End of discussion. So as a result, like on the island where they're not supposed to be available, they were everywhere. They were like flies buzzing around the horses. So it's a trend that is definitely on the upswing. Wausau is going to see more of it in seasons coming up. So I just think we need to get ahead of it and do some things to help for safety.
Well, and not only for our parks, but for our River Life Trail, too. So, anybody else have anything to add? Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I guess just a thought. I think at one point when we were first envisioning some of the planning for the expansion of the trail system, and even for River Life, we had talked about, a way to accommodate all of these different modes of transportation together in one setting, whether it be for speed or for pedestrian safety. I mean, people are walking dogs with leashes, and there's bikes and skateboards and all this stuff. I remember at that time, somebody brought up the idea of speed bumps or barriers, seasonal or not, and there was some concern raised about the impact of that on perhaps people with visual impairments or limited vision. Like, is it a trip hazard? Is it like, I mean, if you're going to have a walking path, your effort to slow down one thing may impact another thing. And I don't remember who it was that brought that up, but it came up in a meeting as far as, do you alleviate or try to mitigate one hazard by creating another? And I think that's something we have to be mindful of. Perhaps people with all sorts of different abilities are going to be using these facilities. It would be different if it was a road, and even then we try to steer away from stuff like that. I mean, we have them in the parking ramps, but we try to steer away from that because I don't know how effective a temporary one is, but the permanent ones are very difficult to plow around. So, but with a trail, specifically, we talked about creating a hazard where there isn't one now, trying to slow down some other type of hazard for pedestrians. So I think that's something we're going to have to look at.
And that's a good point, because out there at my campground, they put in some speed bumps, and I said, well, and I tripped over them at night. I did. And I said, perhaps you need to put some lights out there, and they did. They put some solar lights out there for them. So that is a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other further discussion, since this is just a discussion? Alder Neal.
Yeah, just to kind of add to that thought about, trip hazards, I guess we have to weigh priorities and think about somebody's whipping along at 25 miles an hour, which they're not supposed to be doing. A collision could be pretty drastic on a walking trail. There's all kinds of modes of transport on there, from wheelchairs to baby buggies to everything. So I think that the protection against somebody getting run over might be a higher priority than a possible trip hazards. I think as long as we keep those things visibly painted, perhaps lighted, that at least we can alleviate some of that concern.
Okay, thank you. Alder Lukens?
I don't know, excuse me, if this would be feasible. I'm sure maybe cost-wise it would not be, but I'm just thinking about, excuse me, is there a happy medium where maybe like, I don't know, a gate or something? But I don't know that would be possible, but it would force someone on a bike to have to kind of stop to open it. And if someone's walking, like some type of, I don't know, simple one, but that might be more of a pain than not. So just trying to think of other alternatives. Thank you.
Any further discussion, Alder Rasmussen?
Thank you. I don't know, but, whenever we had talked about speeding on streets and things, and, for a while our, at least politically, the go-to treatment for speeding on roads was stop signs, and that didn't work out because it wasn't up to standards and whatnot. We always got told at that point in the CISM committee that the treatment for speed is enforcement, it's not barriers. And so, they don't want you to put up a stop sign to slow down traffic. They want you to go out there and patrol it and issue some tickets. And so, I don't know if maybe the answer maybe isn't modifying our infrastructure, it's maybe enforcement. And, whether that's through the PD or if it's a CSO type function or whatever, our trails are patrolled by bike patrol. Obviously if someone is too fast on there maybe needs to be an intervention that way and deal with the people creating the problem and then not create a hazard for everyone. So, maybe those are discussions that we need to have before we go about installing anything, but it always seems to me like we've always been told that the solution for speed hazards is enforcement, it's not modification. Even though, we've tried to modify certain types of intersections and we've tried to modify crosswalks and things to try to slow down traffic and, get people to, in general, to just slow down for their surroundings. That doesn't always work, and enforcement works when they do it, and consistently do it. It's something that even in neighborhoods requires continuous maintenance. When they're there, people slow down. When they leave, they speed back up. But that's a cyclical problem that we have all over town. But, maybe we need some of that locally,
Okay, thank you. Alder Neal.
Yeah, I forgot the one extra thing that was mentioned at the meeting this morning was those little solar-powered, speed, signs that, blink when you're going too fast.
Super expensive.
And it's something to look into. I mean, because that does have a psychological effect, I mean, to where you see that and you go, oh, I better, ratchet it down here a little bit. So something also to be looked into.
Okay. Alder Watson.
And just to clarify, there's technically no like speed limits on the paths as of now. So even if we wanted to try to enforce, I mean, there's none, right?
There's no signage.
But it
But
is
in
at
our
15.
ordinance, it says not to exceed 15 miles per hour or unless posted. So right now, we don't have any postings with a speed limit, so that's what it would be unless we posted at a different speed. But we don't have any signage. And I mean, that's something that I think if the enforcement is going to be a question, and whether or not you can clock how fast a bike is going like a car, that's a question. I do know that in the past, I've been told by Wausau PD that if there's signage present, it's easier for them to enforce. So maybe that is something that they would require to put those speed limit signs up. But currently, there isn't any physically out there. We just have the rules in our ordinance.
Kind of like when I reported a guy carrying a gun on the 400 block. It's not posted, so it's okay. So maybe we do need to look into posted some signs, some signage at different various spots. Is that something this committee would want to look into and where?
Well, I think that we can do an assessment of our signage out there, and then, I mean, if we want signage up, that's just a direction from the committee, and we can get 15-mile-an-hour signs made and get them posted. Especially on the River's Edge Trail, it's probably the most important trail at this point.
Would that be something for this committee or for the Infrastructure and Facilities Committee? Alder Rasmussen.
I feel like it's important to take stock of what's out there, and if it's not posted, I mean, really think about it, whether it's residents or visitors. There's no way for people to know if there is a speed limit at all or if they're too fast when they are. So that really, if we don't have it posted properly, is half on us. So, if you tell people what the limit is and they exceed it, that's one thing. But if there's no way to know, that is really not necessarily on the cyclist either. So I feel like something has got to get posted, but, whether that gets done for next season now, because we're coming up to the fall, that would give you the winter to complete the inventory. But I feel like before the season would pick up again, that we should have something out there so people can easily understand what the rules are. And I mean, even if it's a matter of even posting some rules beyond just the speed limit that, slower people need to keep right. I mean, maybe pedestrians keep right and stuff that's moving keep left. I mean, they're just common sense type things that alleviate conflict between faster modes of transportation and slower ones. If you're out walking with a dog in a stroller and a bicycle comes up, people should reasonably be able to predict that one event is going to be happening more to the right than the left. And, so there's some orderly way for people to go around other people. I mean, these are all new experiences for us because the trail's fairly new, but, reasonable signage or trail rules would make some sense. I mean, just for courtesy, user courtesy.
So my question would be, what city parks do we have trails going through that would need it? Or would it just be for the Riverside or the River Life Trail? Because do we actually have any, I mean, it's not like Marathon Park, they've got the trail going through there, but that's a county park, so.
Right.
Do we have any?
Well, the River Edge Trail continues through
Right,
Schofield Park. I mean, it's,
okay.
it's through some, and there's trails within certain parks as well, just little neighborhood things. So I think the park department doing the inventory would make some sense.
Okay.
It's probably I mean, the heavier traveled ones are where it really makes sense. I think the stuff where there's not very many people on, it's probably less of a priority, right?
So should we ask Jamie to come back with
Some kind of proposal before
some kind
spring.
of proposal of where she thinks they might need it in our city parks? And
Right.
is our River Life Trail under the parks, or?
It is, that's probably the main one, but if there's other ones that they have
and-
concerns
and
about, I
perhaps
mean,
along the River Life Trail as well? Okay.
right. I mean, that would probably give them a few months to work on it too.
Sure.
so,
Yeah, like you say, we don't really need anything until
right.
next
I
spring.
mean, before we want to do something as soon as the frost is out, if you got to put signage up, but now the season is kind of winding down, so,
Sure. But in the meantime, we can get prepped for the spring. We can have the
For sure.
signage made, the poles made. And does that sound appropriate for all the members here? Okay, then we can, you got that, Jamie?
I do.
All right.
So just to be clear, nothing is needed with the ordinance itself at this point. We're just looking at putting up more education and signage possibly. Okay.
Okay, thank you. On to item 4, discussion and education on recreational immunity.
Okay, I'm going to turn this over to Attorney Jacobson. This was just a request on some clarification after an incident we had earlier this summer that she put together, and I did put the memo on your table. We can upload it to the packet later. It's more for information. No action is needed at this time, right?
Not tonight unless they want to go ahead and explore some of these options. And I may call on you to describe some signs that you have out at some of your water areas, which we've talked about before. Thank you and good evening. Jamie is correct. This follows on the heels of the unfortunate, tragic drowning death of a 16-year-old young man near the boat and kayak dock on the River Life on May 11th, after which the police department started an investigation, the results of which I have not seen. As you know, there's no signage down there now on the pier that says no swimming or anything of the sort, nor are there throw buoys or life rings. I know Jamie's made comments in the past about even removing the pier and possibly putting up fencing. Shortly after May 11th, on May 16th, an individual from the North Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission reached out and suggested we install life preservers on the waterfront. And on May 28th, a citizen reached out directly to Jamie and requested the installation of multiple no swimming signs. Alder Neal may recall back in May of 2018, I think you raised this discussion as we talked about many families congregating on the Isle of the Ferns down in Oak Island Park in areas where there's a lot of dangerous shifting sand. And we talked quite a bit then about posting hazardous swimming areas near and around Fern Island in multiple languages for our population at the time. And Peter Knotek, these may not be his exact words, but he had the same understanding that I had after reaching out to CIVMIC, and that was if the city were to consistently regulate swimming in all of the natural waterways within our boundaries, then staff would be assigned the responsibility for erecting and maintaining the signs or the equipment, determining which areas are hazardous, and then continue to check for shifting and changing conditions. And I think that was the challenge then, is there are drop-offs and sandbars that keep naturally shifting as part of the changing riverway, and it is discretionary. You can put up signs and put out equipment, but you need to make sure that you maintain those then and constantly inspect them and move them around and keep them current. So CIVMIC at the time, and this has not changed, stated that there was no duty to warn the public under the recreational immunity statute, and that whether we wanted to sign hazardous conditions is a discretionary decision, and we would have immunity under the governmental immunity statute. So this kind of brings into play both the recreational immunity statute and the governmental immunity statute. CIVMIC then talked about two cases they defended for two of their member cities, both having to do with lifeguards. One is the city of Kenosha case, where the city had hired lifeguards, but they were either inattentive or not in their chairs when boy drowned on Lake Michigan on a city beach. And even then, the parents alleged negligence. The court found that the city was not liable and was immune from liability under both recreational immunity and governmental immunity. By providing a lifeguard, the landowner, which in this case would be the city as the trustee of the public waters, does not assume a duty to provide lifeguard services in a non-negligent manner. And they tried to say that a pier was like a sidewalk for which you don't have immunity in certain circumstances. They said a municipal pier was the type of property intended to be covered by the recreational immunity statute. So unless they could show that the city engaged in malicious conduct out of ill will or malice, the city will enjoy recreational immunity. In the Linville case, so Civmec defended the city of Janesville. These are both back in the 90s after the current recreational immunity statute was changed in 1983. Because it had been so gutted since its inception in 1963 that the legislature just rewrote it. In that case, two adults and a child in the nighttime went looking for fishing spots. They got caught in the mud, and eventually the man and the child went into the water in the vehicle, and the woman in the car called for help. And part of the challenge was whether or not they were engaging in a recreational activity, because they weren't fishing or doing anything else, but they were spotting fishing spots for preparation for fishing the next day. So the court found that the city was acting independent of its functions as an owner of recreational land, and that they did enjoy recreational immunity for the activity of preparing to fish the next day, but they weren't immune from the providing public paramedic services, perhaps in a negligent manner. So those were two separate functions, but the city was found liable with something having nothing to do with its being an owner of recreational land. So in both cases, the city enjoyed immunity from liability. So on July 2nd of 2018, this committee voted 3-2 to recommend the installation of signs in several languages at Isle of the Ferns warning of hazardous conditions. And then we asked the county what kind of signage you folks posted, and I couldn't find the pictures, but I know you have some out at Dells of the Eau Claire and other places where there are what you consider hazardous conditions, so we can talk about that in a little bit. It was also suggested to me I call the state DNR, and they said we regulate boat landings, but we don't regulate swimming activity, so we don't care what signage you use, it's totally up to you. We also have one ordinance under 9.22010 which prohibits swimming and wading in the following areas other than for purposes of launching a boat within 50 feet of a boat ramp, and that's 5 parks: DC Everest Park, Gilbert Park, Memorial Park, Oak Island Park, and Schofield Park. So there might be something we could do in addition to maybe installing either signage and or equipment by changing our ordinance and adding other areas, and then we could sign them as well. So the legal issue is really, does a Wisconsin city enjoy recreational or governmental immunity for liability for injuries or death occurring on public waterfronts if it places signage there or equipment like throw buoys or life jackets? So I laid out the recreational immunity statute. No owner has a duty to keep property safe unless you're acting maliciously or you charge a fee, and we don't charge a fee for people to use the pier down at River Life. And then there's the known danger exception. If you know there's a hazardous condition and you don't warn about it, you could be found liable as well. So there's general broad immunity, but it's not absolute. There are those exceptions. And then there's the general governmental immunity statute, which someone would bring a negligent or a tort claim against the city, and there's a cap for torts under 89380 of $50,000. So in any event, the limit of liability for the city would be our $50,000 insured retention. So the bottom line really is that liability may only attach if a municipality maliciously fails to warn of a known hazard, charges a fee and something happens, equipment is negligently maintained or not replaced and creates a new hazard, or they undertake a duty or promise safety and then fail to fulfill that. So if the life jackets or life rings or throw buoys are damaged or missing, there might be a potential situation where someone needed it and it weren't there, and you had decided to put it there, that you could be sued, maybe found liable as well. So while we have strong protection under both of these immunity statutes in placing equipment on public waterfront, it's not absolute, as I said, and most of the litigation involves whether or not someone's engaging in a recreational activity. Here we're just talking about swimming or public waterfronts, Wisconsin River, things like that, not even at swimming pools. So that kind of narrows the scope for us, because swimming is absolutely covered as a recreational activity under the definition of the statute. So again, discretionary decisions are protected under governmental immunity about whether or not you wish to place signs and or safety equipment. And recreational immunity protects us, again, from anything that takes place, as long as we're not maliciously not marking a known hazard, we're charging an admission, or we're negligently maintaining our safety equipment. So it's not without a bit of risk, but at least if you know what that is, you certainly could make the discretionary decision to place signage or safety equipment anywhere. You know, the only time you would definitely want to do it is if there were a known hazard existing that was well known to everyone and you didn't sign it. That would probably be a problem. Otherwise, it's completely a discretionary decision. Jamie, did you want to address any of the, well, and then to that other point, because we have our own liability insurer and you maintain our parks, I would still think it would be a city council decision to install the equipment and or signage, but the Parks Department employees would likely do it in the city parks, correct? Would install and maintain them?
Yeah, direction would have to come from the city, and then it would be part of our duties. I do want to point out that, so, thank you for the reminder
Yeah.
of the July, that was a month after I started, not even a month after I started, in 2018. And I can't remember what the conversation was following that, but the direction of the minutes was to come up with a sign template. So, and it wasn't necessary to place the sign, it was come up with a sign template and then have you look at it, and I don't think that ever happened, to be honest. But also, I think this is good information as far as the recreational immunity that the city, and the government immunity that's even in addition to that the city does have for these activities. If you do want signage or equipment places, please understand that there's a cost to that. Right now, I do not have the staff to maintain signage and equipment at all different locations. If you want that, and that's a priority to the city, that's going to be an extra cost for, we're going to have to get staffing to be able to do that. We are, as we're going through the budget processes for both city and the county, you know, we're all looking at cutting staff, and it's where we're at. So I just want to put that out there. If you do, I believe that, and Ann pointed out here, that in most cases, what we have going on in our parks and facilities, we are covered, and if it is, we have ordinances, we can put, you know, more information in place as far as where swimming is prohibited. We have specific swimming areas within our system, none actually within the city other than our pools, but in the county we have specific beaches that we call out, which is Sunnyvale, Bago Plain, and Dellsville Clare, and Mission Lake. We have four beaches, and those in our county ordinances are not staffed. They are signed that it is swim at your own risk. They are monitored. Those beaches are now monitored for water quality. So if there is something that changes the water quality, our health department helps us post those kinds of signage. But they are not something that is staffed at this time or have any other equipment there. If we're talking specifically about River Life Piers, I have brought that up into the difficulty of putting those piers in and out every year. We even contracted that out this year, and I don't know that the contractor even wants to come back because it's so difficult. It's dangerous for staff to put in with the current there, and they're rarely used, is the other issue that we have. So to provide maybe a walkway and an overlook area is an option to, save the cost of those piers and to make it a vision area where people can go and enjoy it, sit on a park bench and enjoy it, but nothing in those areas is for swimming or meant for swimming. And that's been pretty clear in our rules and regulations, but we can always add that as well. So this is more for conversation and then whatever you want us to do going forward.
Do people actually use those piers for pulling up kayaks or pulling a boat up to,
do.
or?
They do, but not as much as we thought they would, and that's really because the river's not navigable there. I mean, you can go as far as the
Sure.
piers are a little bit further down, but you can't get to Lake Wausau because of the dam. So
Sure.
there are some people that will come down from upriver and, park and go to Wow, or park and take a walk. There's a few kayakers that will come and do the same thing, but it's not, I think we could get away with keeping the kayak launch there and taking out the other pieces of the pier, and it would still be available. We have a kayak launch just up from the park as well.
Sure.
If the river was navigable and people could go from Lake Wausau up and down, I think it would be used quite heavily.
Maybe it's not on the agenda, but that's something we should look at in the future if we want to continue the use of that pier, if it's going to, if the current's bad, the water's not navigable, and if people are falling off there and dying, we don't need that either. So Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. When this incident happened down there, I actually wondered this myself. And I suspected that we probably had some municipal liability in play that would mitigate the legal ramifications of the operation of the facility. But I guess where I am conflicted on that is, even though there's a legal principle and a legal precedent that offers protection, there becomes a matter of good conscience in terms of our ownership of those facilities. When you create, there's a concept of attractive nuisance. When you create an environment or a condition where you draw people towards a body of water and encourage them to use it, whether it's by kayak or canoe or by boat or on foot or whatever, the next natural assumption for some folks is swimming or wading. And so I feel like our entire development of the riverfront, moving industry out of there, making that a user-friendly environment, encouraging people to live and walk there, the pier, all of that is encouraging really easy access to that water. And, I don't know about installing necessarily devices, but I do think that we should have signage there. I think Oak and Fern Island, I think places where Schofield Park, where people have easy access from the shore to get in that water. We offer pools, and we decided to continue to offer pools specifically for the purpose of mitigating river swimming risk. Because before there were pools, people were readily using that as a way to cool off. We didn't want that. There were accidents. So we maintained these 3 pools to keep people out of the rivers and that. So I do feel like that's something we need to look at. Now, as far as costs of signs, we have a sign shop, and they can make all kinds of signs for really low cost, and they survive the elements just fine. Doesn't have to be a decorative wooden sign. It can be a sign that's made down at DPW and pounded in with a post. I really feel like that's a nominal cost for us. And I feel like when we toured DPW, the sign shop made signs for every one of us, and they made them in 10 minutes. So I feel like the sign, the acquisition of the sign and the install is the easy part. So I do feel like where those conditions exist, especially near the pier, along the River Edge Trail, Oak and Fern Island, some of those parks where, it's logical to think that people would try to swim because nothing tells them they can't. And for visitors, they don't know what the river current is, and they don't know where it's calm and not. And those conditions can change pretty suddenly. So I do feel like that's something that we should look into because I feel like our development of that environment has created that situation. I also think that when we first conceived of the Riverwalk and we put in that wharf, there was this idea that all kinds of folks would arrive by boat and park there, and that it would be this like bustling, visitor-friendly environment. If we know now, years in, that people are not constantly arriving by boat, and we could get by with, a kayak launch there and a kayak takeout, which is easier to operate, that maybe a scenic overlook or maybe even some type of gated fishing pier would maybe be better and safer than the wharf where people can pull in and dock a boat, if that really isn't happening there. And if it's difficult to get a boat in and out of there, and they're difficult to put in and out, that's something maybe we need to look at. I mean, experience is a great teacher, right? So we've done it a few winters and a few summers now. So I really feel like we need to, even if we're not obligated to put up signage, I really feel like there's got to be some. Like, it's not even a matter of the liability part for us. That's just the money piece. It's about the loss to the community when there's loss of life at a facility like that. Like, there's a loss to the community, there's a loss to those families. And I can't imagine that the cost of signage is that high if we make them in-house. So that's just my 2 cents on the signage piece.
Go ahead, Jamie.
Signage is not a big deal, but I think you have to be, as a committee, if you want signage, you have to be specific about where you want to put it, because the other thing I've heard over time in this development is you want this area to be beautiful and you don't want to clutter it with signs. I mean, people access those rocks, the riprap along the entire trail all the time. There's kids climbing on there. So I could see one, if we have docks somewhere, we have ordinances that say those rules should be posted at those boat launches already. I barely remember the conversation of the Isle of the Ferns. There's one location I think that had in mind when this came up, on the southeast corner edge there, but that is a natural shoreline. So where does it end? Where do you put them? So I think further direction. Plus, we also, as the Parks Department, do not know the conditions of the river. We're not on the river to know where there's hazardous conditions or not. So I think further direction, we'd be happy to put up signs. The signs isn't the issue. It's maintaining if there's equipment involved or if there's other things to maintain in certain areas, that it would all depend on what the scope of that is. But I think as far as signage goes, I would need further direction as to where would you like them? Where do you think we need to put them? Because we could put them every 5 feet along the entire river all the way up, because people access it all over. So I think that would be further direction. If it's a specific boat launch, a pier, by the whitewater course, we've got little ramps where the kayaks can go in. I mean, is it at each one of them? When you get to Isle of the Ferns, like I said, it's on a natural shoreline. Is it anywhere there's a man-made little trail going out to the water? I think further direction really is needed.
There has to be a common sense approach. Obviously not every 5 feet, because I'm also mindful of sign pollution. But if there's none right now, I mean, we already know if it's dangerous for our staff to put in and take out a pier, it's probably dangerous for other people to be out there too. I mean, that's the first logical step, right? We know that we have the handicap accessible kayak launch to the north that is not a safety hazard. So maybe that needs to be the one, and maybe you don't need a second one. I mean, I think that we just have to employ some kind of common sense for where we put them. Obviously, you don't want them every 5 feet, but none is not, maybe not an option anymore. We know what happens now. So, it might be helpful if we would take a look at a GIS map of some of this and, get some guidance as far as, we all are not privy to the condition of every facet of the river as well. And, I think that there's some areas that are obvious. There's not that many. I mean, we know, the riprap and the rocks is one thing. That's a point of difficult access. People go out there and they climb on the stuff, but they're not invited to. A wharf, you walk right out there. And, it looks, someone could jump right off there, not realizing that that's a problem. If they're not from here or they're new to the area. I mean, those are the things that I think we just have to have like a logical approach. So, I mean,
If you're talking about physical structures like the wharf or dock, that's easy.
right,
When we get to, like Isle of the Ferns, which came up in 2018, that's a little bit more difficult.
Right.
There isn't something there.
well, and I think that maybe is part of that inventory. Like, we need some guidance as far as what situations exist at those facilities that could be a problem, I mean, as a committee, we're not going to go out there and tour them all. We need some recommendations. And, just like we need some, guidance from the off-season as far as where it would be reasonable to notify people. I think that's where we need some direction too. It can't be 100% the committee's responsibility to sniff out and locate all the spots and the spacing. We need a recommendation for like a sign plan, I feel like.
But Alder Rasmussen, I guess I'm pushing back as staff right now because we don't have that expertise either. Like I can put them at any dock we put out or at the wharf where what you said earlier about access that invites people to come down and walk and be right next to the river, that is easy. I can do that. If it's other places that you're talking about, and I just keep going back to Isle of the Ferns, like that's where if you have specific recommendations as a committee, that's the direction we need because we don't know the conditions of the river. We're not out on the river, and I don't have staff that has expertise to even go out on the river to find that. So if it's a structure, that's easy, and we can definitely put signage up.
That's where I think the line gets drawn because the structure is something we put there as an invitation for use. A naturally occurring condition is different. Like that, I mean, you're not going to sign every 5 feet of Isle of Ferns. But when you go out and build a wharf or you build a dock or you build a pier that promotes the access and creates the path, that's where I feel like we have the duty. Natural inlets and natural jut outs that occur within the riverbank, that's not, and even the riprap, that's a rocky shoreline. It doesn't even look like it's conducive to walking. People try it, but that's their choice. But when you build a facility that like invites the use, that's where I feel like we have the duty. And maybe that's where,
That's easy.
maybe that clarifies the line too for me then. So,
Okay, any other discussion? Is that something you want to put for a future agenda item to have perhaps a discussion and possible action on?
if we'd have, yeah, I mean, if we get an overview of just maybe a basic sign plan, that's something we can think about in the off-season as well. I mean, obviously, there's no urgency that we do it this month, but, if we have some ideas for, a sign that could be put at each facility that, no swimming. Not even swim at your own risk. They just shouldn't even try it. And, because it's not a swimming beach. It's not marked for depth. It's not, that's what we want to stop is that engagement with the facility.
Okay. You got that, Jamie?
Yeah, and I think with that, we can put for discussion the piers probably there too.
Sure.
Bless you.
Yes.
Right. If there's a modification that needs to be made at the wharf to make it safer in general and easier to manage, I'd be interested in that.
Okay. And nobody
you.
has any questions for Attorney Jacobson? All right. Thank you, Ann. Item number 5 then, discussion and possible action approving sculpture on the River Edge Trail. Go ahead, Jamie.
I think so. Yep. I'm going to pull up in the agenda or in your packet is information that was supposed to go to the Arts Commission, but then that meeting got changed, so it's coming here just to keep it moving. It will go back to the Arts Commission and I think the Plan Commission. We have Brad Lenz here that knows a lot more about this request and the history of this than I do, so I will pull it up on
Page
here.
21.
Yep, okay, there we go. But there has been a sculpture being pursued by the Walter Alexander Foundation, and in your packet is pictures of that sculpture. It looks like the proposed location is by the bridge going out to Barker Stewart Island, kind of by the junior achievement area, I think is what I'm talking about. The only thing from a Parks Department thing that I wanted to add to this, and I can let Brad then talk a little bit more about it, is just keeping in mind anytime, again, because I just mentioned it with maintenance and staffing availability, is anytime anything's been added to this area or this park area or really anywhere in town where a sculpture's been added, it becomes part of our requirement as a Parks Department to maintain. And again, my staffing is tight and our budgets are tight, so I want you to keep in mind that it's great when we accept donations, and it's a really cool statue, but keep in mind what the long-term costs of this city are and the responsibility that we have to maintain it. If this has to be waxed every year like our kayak statue does, it will probably have to be something we add to the budget to have a contractor do. We currently do the kayak statue. We are not experts at it at all, and we've even had the Morning Rotary who donated that kayak statue not really like how we do it. So I think if we're going to have multiple pieces within the city that is going to need that, it will be something that will be a maintenance cost that will add to the budget. But with that, I just want to throw it out there. I guess, Brad, if you want to talk a little bit more about the statue, or if there's any questions for Brad.
Thanks. I'm happy to answer any questions. Like Jamie said, it will be a bronze sculpture similar to the kayaker sculpture, so it would require some maintenance. I did a little digging around. There's a national sculpture cleaner that's coming to Wausau next week. I'm going to meet with them. There's a private collector in town that has 30-some bronzes that they use this person for. I'm going to try to get a little bit more details on the cost estimates. That particular one wouldn't charge a travel fee, but they would just charge it like on a per sculpture basis. If we wanted to do this one and the kayaker sculpture, that's something they could give us an estimate for. That collector that does have that those multiple sculptures, they said we could probably get away with maintaining it every other year or 2 to 3 years. This particular one wouldn't be installed until next year, subject to approval. So then it'd be a couple of years in the future that it would probably need its first cleaning and waxing. Just quick search on AI, it's maybe a couple $100 to $1,000 for a cleaning and waxing per sculpture. Again, that could happen every 2 to 3 years, depending on how clean and shiny we want to keep it. But a lot of them do develop sort of a patina, and some people find that okay, and some people prefer the brand spanking new shiny ones. So it just kind of depends on how we want it to look and maintain it. So it is, just to add, the Walter Alexander Foundation is now working with the Judd S. Alexander Foundation on funding the sculpture in its entirety, along with the base. They would donate it to the city for a public sculpture, and we would be required to maintain it over the long term. But other than that, they're going to take care of all of the funding for it. We would be required to prepare the site. If you look at the site plan, there are some boulders in that spot where they're looking at putting it. They ask that we, relocate those to a spot wherever we want to put those, and then work with them on the electricity running. There's some electricity out there already, running the line to the spotlight that's going to be externally lighting the sculpture. That's really the only obligations of the city at this point.
I think it's cool. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I also agree. I think that the sculpture is well conceived. It is a great nod to the history of the area, for the way the river was used originally, in terms of industry and its history. So, we have obviously supported other sculptures along the trail. Rotary has helped with that. I think that even at one point, one of the first ones was the peace sculpture that's out just south of the library, that an exchange student had done for us years ago. So I think that it adds to the visual interest of the trail, and it does give a nod to its history. In terms of maintenance, my understanding is this one doesn't flow water like the kayak statue does, so I think obviously that makes it a little bit easier. You're only dealing with the weather, and not plumbing. So, I think that this makes sense. I think the placement makes sense because it's in an area that takes you to the sawmill ruins, basically. So I really was excited to see this. I think that beautification is a key component of the trail. Obviously, if that adds to our maintenance costs a little bit, we totally understand and expect that, because when you build something the size of Wausau's riverfront, we know that it's going to need maintenance and it's going to need some engagement. So I really think this is something that we should recommend that the Arts Commission approve if it ends up needing to go there. I would make a motion that we approve the installation and the acceptance of the sculpture and commit to the maintenance.
Thank you, Alder Rasmussen. Alder Lukens, you second? Any further discussion on the statute? Motion has been made by Alder Rasmussen and second from Alder Lukens for approving the sculpture on the River's Edge Trail. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that passes. Item 6, educational items. Thank you, Brad.
Okay, I put in your packet the, oops, I'll go back up. Whoops, I gotta turn. In the agenda packet are always the park updates that we have. You can see we are finishing up a lot of projects. So we have, oops. Oh, that still didn't work. I don't know why this is not working. I'll go back up. Oh, now it's got a mind of its own.
There you go.
The pickleball courts are completed. For some that have had questions about whether or not we'd add a fence between the courts, because that's been some concern since they're back-to-back. We are looking into the cost of that, and we'll be adding a short fence in between those courts. So our staff is researching that right now.
Mike?
I'm sorry. So I've had some residents reach out and ask about,
I cannot hear you.
sorry.
Gotta use that mic.
I had some residents reached out and asked about I don't know, green on the fence. I don't know what that's called. The screening. Can that be taken off on the one side or no? Do you know about that?
It can be, but it was requested before when it was a tennis court because it keeps the sound in, and pickleball is even louder. So we can take it down if you want it to be taken down. But if they want it back up because it's too loud, then, I mean,
So we'll have to, okay, we can talk about it. Thank you.
yeah. Okay, so that's the Alexander Pickleball Court Athletic Park. They're done for this season, so we have a list of small items to do for that. Pools are closed. And then the skate park is complete. I think I had this on as a separate update, so I'll talk about the grand opening as a recap in a little bit. Looking at that, we just did some updates to the Rose Bowl ball field, doing some much-needed field maintenance there, and putting in a new water fountain. And then the rest is kind of general maintenance. You can see all the work at Yonke Park and that for the parallel parking that they have there. And then we continue to do our routine maintenance as normal. And then we have some county park projects in there that I can answer any questions that you might have as far as park updates. We're busy. We still have a lot of events going on in city and county.
Okay. Thank you, Jamie. Any discussion on the updates, Alder Watson?
So I did forward this, and I know you talked with like one of the people that had called about the pollinator issue, the mowing in the parks. And I don't know if, I'm guessing like you look at sort of just the timeline for pollinator, like when that habitat's sort of still being used and like when to mow, like
Honestly, we do not.
okay.
No.
So is that something we could maybe look into of coordinating that like a little bit better in the future?
Pardon me, but that we'll move that onto item number 7.
Is it number? Well, I guess it was about mowing, which is an update, correct?
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. I I mean, we can put it on a future agenda. I asked for it to be talked about tonight too. So, I mean, I can try again next month. But I think it would be just helpful if we had maybe like a time frame or did more of an educational deep dive on that. So I guess that's my question.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard for our staff to, it's, when we mow these ditches, we get a bigger mower in. And so if we're bringing it in for one mowing, this month and one mowing next month, it's a larger cost and it's a lot more staff time. So when we have our mowing cycle for these things that need to be mowed once a year because they have a different function, it's hard to go around a lot of things. If we have a specific area that's planted for pollinators, that's different because then it's planned that way. This area, this is the first we've heard of it having milkweed. So now that we know that it has milkweed, I mean, we can kind of put it on the schedule to be moved back or up because we did look up the mowing schedule of that. You can either do it like early summer, I think it was late April, early May, and then after the first frost is the other option. But honestly, when we have areas that we know that we need to maintain, if it's a regular area that's not been specifically set for that, then our guys have it on their list to do and they go and do it. So they don't have, like we have horticulturists that have some expertise in this, but our staff doesn't have expertise in what they're looking for. So I think it's hard. I mean, we can look at specific spots, but I don't know. I don't know exactly how to address that because it's not a spot that was specifically planted for that, and it serves a drainage purpose.
And I guess it was, because it's only mowed like once a year, right?
Once
a season. So, I mean, I think maybe we could talk about like when those, just one a season kind of things can fall. Because, I mean, if it can fall by, the later, like we can push it back or push it forward, like just aligning those a little bit better. Because, I mean, I think we're all sort of concerned about pollinators just in general, and that's the basis of our food supply, right? So I think we just, even though it might not be designated as a pollinator habitat, like I think as a community we want to help, sustain that. So if there's something, maybe we can have that discussion over the winter as well, because we won't have to worry about it again, like all the other things we've been talking about. But maybe it's something we can sort of look and shoot for next year.
Yeah, I guess I would need further direction on what you're exactly looking for because we have had discussions in the past about, like not mowing in May and that no mow May, but we've provided information to the committee and I can try to erect that, but
Slow to mow.
we have so
Yeah.
much to mow and it grows so fast that then if we tried waiting, 4 years ago, just a little bit, and we got so far behind, and then we have all these people calling because this grass is too long at this area, and we're not following the city's weed ordinance, and then we're paying overtime to do
Right.
that, so.
And I get that there's like parks, the park over in District 1 or whatever, and like versus, the ditches. But maybe it's just like what kind of schedule you have. Like if it's these ditches just like pop in whenever you can fit it in, then maybe there's certain parts that maybe we can say, okay, these aren't the pop in fitted in ones. We can just move, and it's not going to be the entire city, but places where there are good habitats. Like maybe we can try to at least maintain those for a little bit longer. So I guess that's just my question is like, is that something we could talk about, like just the schedule of like what ones, I don't know, you have to mow and when they have to be mowed, like if it's an annual or a biennial or every week.
The only area that we have a deadline of mowing, and this has come up about pollinators in the past, is the hill on the sports complex. That's off of Curling Way and Kent Street. We have to, by our agreement with the DNR and by law, because we get notice from our city environmental engineer, that has to be mowed by July 1st every year. If we don't do that, we get a nasty email. Other than that, it's really direction of the committee and the council.
Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you.
think
I
we
guess
better get
maybe
moving.
mowing is a larger discussion we should have on a future agenda.
I think so,
Because
yes.
remember, we had a while where to cut expenses, we tried to not mow certain areas, and that was not palatable to neighborhoods where people were afraid then that we would be harboring populations of certain like wood ticks and things and whatnot. So I think mowing in general maybe should be a conversation we have, because I think what we're talking about here is a naturally occurring patch of milkweed at Schofield Park, which we had residents who were raising monarchs, came to get it for food, and it was gone. And so I don't know that anyone necessarily knew it was there, but now we know it's there. So, I think that the not mowing situation may fly a little bit better in that area at Schofield Park than it would at Gilbert Park, where it really didn't work when we tried it in the past to just not cut it. So maybe we just need to have that discussion, and, if we're trying to balance the workload and bringing in larger equipment, figure out what areas would tolerate waiting versus which areas won't. Maybe is something we need to look at, and if it needs to be all at once, will it keep or won't it? I think that's maybe next month or the month after, if we could put it on, would be helpful.
Okay. We can do that. Anything else on educational items, Ms. Polly?
I mean, just if there's any questions on the last year, the grand opening went really well. We had a great turnout at the skate park. It's been really well received. And then I was asked to provide the committee with a end of the season pool update. So in your packet is numbers of passes, attendance for this year. I guess if you want me to go through it, I can, or you can.
No, I think there's another meeting that's going to be happening here shortly.
I mean, to sum it up, pools were up, and we love that, right? So
Yeah.
that's a good news report.
Okay, so future agenda items, we have mowing, and we have perhaps the signage issue on the water.
And the trail signage for the bike stuff
Yes,
from before, from our third item.
I'd like to add something too, if I might.
sure, Alderman
The
Yule.
River Life Adirondack chairs have been oxidizing for the last couple seasons. I did a little bit of looking around today. This is not something that really requires replacement. They can be treated. They just need to be, cleaned and then, recoated. There's a variety of products that are designed for like resin type furniture that is oxidizing. So we should take care of that before next season.
And if we wanted to, too, I guess I could say the stage lights at the,
That's on a work list.
it's not been fixed all summer. Go ahead, Alder Lukens.
Just wanted to say, is there, do you have a map or a schedule of the mowing? What is mowed, or is that?
Perhaps we can
Work.
bring that for the mowing
Right, I was just wondering if that could be
added.
added in it if we have that discussion.
Mowing schedule?
If there is one, I don't know if that's easily accessed or not, Jamie. If not, that's fine, but okay, might be helpful for the discussion. Thanks.
All right, thank you all. Any other future agenda items? Okay, then we'll move on to item number 8, which is next meeting will be Monday, October 6, 2025, 5:15, council chambers and City Hall. Next, we have item number 9.
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Alder Watson to adjourn, second by Alder Lukens. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jamie.